Press conference is about to begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, media representatives, journalists, welcome to this media conference at midday of the second day of the first recovery conference in Lugano. The proceedings are as follows. We're going to have introductory remarks by President Cassis, followed by introductory remarks by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, and then we're going to take some questions. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Peter. Prime Minister Shmyhal, dear journalists, ladies and gentlemen, there is a sharp contrast between the tragic images from Ukraine that we see on the news every day and those from this conference in Samari, Ticino. This placed an even greater obligation on us to set out a path to give hope to the people in Ukraine and to the many refugees. In the spring, when we refocused URC 22 to take account of the new circumstances, Switzerland and Ukraine, as co-organizers, agreed on a number of objectives. These included launching the process of Ukraine's reconstruction at the international level and defining the principles according to which reconstruction should take place. This may sound rather dry in view of more obvious acute needs, but it is absolutely key to providing Ukraine with prospects for the future and finding a common denominator among all partners. The Lugano Declaration that was presented here today was drawn up by Switzerland and Ukraine together with the participating states and international organizations. All states present here and the European Union have declared their support. The declaration explicitly acknowledges the Ukrainian government's plan for the reconstruction and the development of the country. At the same time, it is clear that reforms must continue. Forming the centerpiece of the declaration are the 7 Lugano principles, which set out how reconstruction needs to take place in order to meet the prime objective of building back better. The declaration states, for example, that reconstruction should be led by Ukraine and be conducted in a sustainable, inclusive manner. We also all agree that the rule of law must be systematically strengthened and corruption eliminated in order to achieve solid results. A further aim of the conference was to underline the broad support of international partners for the reconstruction process in Ukraine. The great solidarity shown by the participating states and organizations was clearly expressed in the statements this morning. All in all, we had this morning 35 statements from countries and 11 statements from organizations. In particular, I would like to thank the European Union for presenting the reconstruction platform and the UK, which will host the next URC. This sends out an important sign for the next stages in this process. For Switzerland, it is clear that we will continue to accompany and support Ukraine as a long-standing partner. Ladies and gentlemen, in the current situation, it was a special honor and responsibility for Switzerland to host the conference. I think we have achieved what we set out to do in a short period of time. I would like to thank everyone who was involved in preparing this event and ensuring that it went smoothly, the Ukrainian co-organizers, all participants, and the authorities concerned. In order to safeguard stability and prosperity in Europe and the food supply worldwide, a peace agreement will be needed, and beyond that, a fresh start in efforts to anchor values such as human rights and democracy in all Eastern Europe. For the time being, this is still a pipe dream. On the other hand, here in Lugano, we have taken an important step on the long road to Ukraine's recovery. This opens up prospects for the future. There is a palpable willingness among all partners for a joint long-term commitment in the interests of the people of Ukraine, of the continent that is home to us, and in the interest of global security. Thank you so much for your attention. The floor is yours.
Шановні колеги, високоповажний
Dear colleagues, Your Excellency, President of this Confederation, thank you very much for the organization of this conference. And I would like to inform that indeed yesterday and today Ukraine, together with our partners, has started a major discussion on the future plan for the reconstruction and recovery of our country once the war is over. This is a very important point of time that gives great hopes to us Ukrainians, and it's also a clear signal to our partners that we shall be victorious, we shall renew our country, and we already need to start preparing for this here and now. So, together with the experts, we have developed a plan for the restoration of Ukraine along the lines of 23 spheres. So for 6 weeks prior to this conference, we have been working on this plan, and the two main vectors is national security and European integration, another cross-cutting topic that is present in all projects is digitalization and Green Deal. They are very important, and this plan consists of three stages. Stage one is quick recovery, and this is what we are already doing today, even as the combat operations are still going on. So we are already rebuilding our motor lanes, our energy grids, and this is where we need support already today, because the state has to perform its duties and its social commitments, and together with our partners, we are working on continuous support that is needed in Ukraine in this area. The second stage is fast recovery, the reconstruction proper that will start once combat operations are over, and this will be a very rapid stage. It includes thousands of projects, and the third stage of this plan is the modernization of Ukraine. That is the reconstruction following the principle that built back better, and of course that means the implementation of all reforms in the context of European aspirations. We have two approaches, parametric and regional. The government currently is working on an electronic map of Ukraine, which registered all the losses caused by the war, with all the coordinates and with all the images and pictures of the damages inflicted on us, and therefore we're working on it in a very open and accountable way, so that this information is crystal clear both to us and to our partners. Also, we have proposed a platform for the recovery of Ukraine, which will become an instrument of an ambitious plan for the recovery of Ukraine, and the government of Ukraine proposes to set up several recovery offices in Washington, Brussels, London, but with the head office in Kiev, following the initiative of President Zelensky. This platform will consist of three levels. The first level is the high level, with the representation of the leaders of the state. The second level is the joint coordination group, that is the executive organ, and then there will be thematic groups specializing in specific areas, and they will be working in compliance with the decision taken by the National Council of Recovery, established by the President, and the main source of Ukraine's recovery should be the confiscated assets of Russia, of the Russian Federation, and of the Russian oligarchs. Everyone has to work on it already now, because we know, we understand that the aggressor has to pay for the destruction, has to pay for the aggression. Moreover, this formula will become a new security approach in the future, because then any potential aggressor shall know that the aggressor will have to pay for the unjustified and unprovoked aggression. That is very important. And moreover, we have held a number of breakout sessions. So we also have held a parliamentary discussion panel, a highly productive one. Also, we spoke about economic recovery. We spoke about the transformation of the Ukrainian economy and how we plan to achieve the economic miracle in Ukraine during the war and after the war is over. Also, we had a breakout session devoted to human capital. That is one of the three recovery pillars, and we spoke about investments in social infrastructure. Also, digitalization is a cross-cutting topic that is omnipresent in all spheres of public life. We also spoke about infrastructure and its recovery as one of the drivers for the development of economy. Of course, the restriction, the regional infrastructure is of critical significance, and already today, with the help of the state budget, we are already rebuilding dozens of bridges and roads. We are already rebuilding water mains and power grids that in the towns and places that have been liberated. Another important task is engaging our partners in this coalition. And as we have said that we are united in defense, we are united in recovery. That's a very important message. But also we have held quite a number of bilateral and multilateral meetings. We have met our colleagues and friends and our partners. We have spoke to the Prime Minister of the Lithuanian Republic. We have met the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, that is in the presidency of the European Council with Mr. Feller. We also have met Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, with whom we spoke about economic and financial issues, and we also spoke about the industrial dialogue, Ukraine, the EU. We spoke to Her Excellency Elisa Truss, and we spoke about the organization holding the next conference in London next year in 2023, and also we have received information, which is unusual, that Germany would be interested in holding the subsequent conference in 2024. And again, I would like to thank His Excellency the President for this wonderful organization, for really good grounds for holding future conferences on the recovery of Ukraine. And I expect that 2024, it's not going to be a recovery conference, it will be a reform in European integration conference. And those two topics are very much interlinked. Therefore, everything is important, and all these minute details and nuances are important. And moreover, we have already held a number of talks with international financial institutions, and we'll talk to them more. That is with IMF, with World Bank, EBRD. We're talking to EIB and many other permanent financial solid partners that have been with us for so many years. They have always been supporting us in our independence, and they're with us today. Yes, the future recovery is the topic we're working on. Yes, we're preparing our country, we're developing the plan, we're preparing the budgets of our partners. But once again, let me reiterate, we need to be supported already today so as to provide for macroeconomic stability, so that our country may still work regardless of this large-scale aggression.
Безпекова зустріч зі всіма головами делегацій. Ми разом з паном президентом мали надзвичайно цікавий багатосторонній розмову, діалог з керівниками ЄС, лідерами країн ЄС, лідерами
multilateral dialogue with the leaders of the European Union, with other partners about the topics, how the security is related to the recovery of Ukraine, and how the security of Ukraine is linked to the security of the entire Europe. That's a very important topic. We have to be actively engaged in this topic. We have to be on the same page, and we need to continue this important dialogue. We have signed with the Swiss government the agreement with public and private organizations, the green projects in Ukraine, and special thanks were expressed, and I would like to do it again. I would express our thanks to the President of Switzerland, Ignacio Casas, a great friend of Ukraine, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for the great support of our country, and also for organizing this forum. and assistance in our future recovery. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Šmihal. We now move on to questions. Please present yourself with your name and the media outlet you work for. Who can I pass the word to? Please, here at the front, first question.
Thank you very much. My name is Christiane Oehlrich for German Press Agency, and my question goes to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, corruption is a pervasive problem, and you and the President have vowed to fight and combat that. Could you give us then one concrete example as to what you have done already to make sure that this is not going to be part of the recovery process? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. It's, I think, that very important question. And before beginning the war, Ukraine made so much efforts to create anti-corruptional infrastructure. And I think that today this anti-corruptional infrastructure created together with our partners is one of the best among our neighbors. And we have all needed instruments to fight corruption. But for me and for my president, first of all, we should create conditions in our country when corruption will be impossible at all. So we will need to fight against corruption, but we should create conditions when corruption will be impossible. So first of all is digitalization. So we digitalized many spheres in our country. First of all, investment sphere, constructing and architectural sphere, it's absolutely developed and digitalized, and it's make corruption in this sphere impossible. And many investors approved this before the war. Next steps, now we are working on the digitalization of all other spheres, beginning from the custom, where we create new digital instrument for possibility to make custom procedures without contact with person. So if you have no contact with person, it's impossible to make corruption. So we create also a special application, so named e-government or electronic government. And many of our people, about 20 million of Ukrainians, it's half of our country, is actively using this application, and it led us to supply to the people about 200 state services through the electronic instruments. It also make corruption impossible, because when you speak through your iPhone or through the telephone, it's impossible to be corrupted. So it's much, much easier. You can register your business in 20 seconds in Ukraine. You can have more than 100 special documents from government during the seconds from this application or from this platform without any contact. You can change your place of registering without spending weeks in lines or in officials. So I think that digitalization and new procedures, new approaches which are connected with European aspirations will let us to take corruption back, and this is very important, not to fight against corruption, but make corruption impossible. Thank you for your question.
Go to the front row. Gentleman right here.
I'm Hussein Knaiber from Al Arabiya News Channel. Ukraine is proposing to confiscate and to use the Russian money frozen as a result of the sanctions in order to rebuild Ukraine. Has there been, during this conference, some sort of unanimity to satisfy this demand, or there are still some divisions, some obstacles to be removed? Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we know, about 300 to 500 billions of dollars of Russian assets are frozen by our partners, USA, European Union, Great Britain, many other civilized countries. First example, it was in Germany, where they confiscate flats of Russian oligarchs, and they support Ukraine through these assets. Another one very good example is in Canada, where they adopted a special national legislation about confiscation of frozen Russian assets and to giving this to Ukrainian side for reconstruction. As I told, it's very important for a civilized world to give the signal to Russia as aggressor and to other potential aggressors in future to understand that unprovoked aggression should be paid by this aggressor. It's very important, not Ukraine, not partners should pay the main part of this recovery money and assets. Russia should pay for this. So because of this, we speak about this so much with our partners. Because of this, many partners begin their way in these directions. And I think that in future, it will be like one of the elements of the world new system of security. We discussed this during our security meeting yesterday in the morning together with President and with leaders of delegations. Thank you for your question. It's very important for us.
For the next question, we go to the lady just behind with the brown jacket. Thank you.
Алла Чиж, канал Україна. Перше питання загальне, скажіть по конференції.
Ukraine channel. First of all, first question, we are talking about what amount of money, what investment will be allocated in the near future, and also concretely, could you say how much would you use for most needed expenses, operational expenses? Would it be loans? Would it be grant investments? That's my first question. And the second is with regard to the scope of volume of railroads. Would be able to export grain, metal, oils. Do you have a negotiation with the European Union, because it's very important for development of the Ukrainian economy? Thank you very much for your question. It's important now to say what amount will it be, because right now we are starting our negotiations and talking today together with the English School of Economic, World Bank. We see the Ukraine had losses in the amount of over 750 billions of dollars. Specific losses that we have already calculated and documented electronically are over $100 billion. And I'm talking here about infrastructure only. I'm not talking about business losses and some other facilities losses. Practically, we talk here about the process of recovery. It will be an expensive process. We already know that hundreds of billions will be paid by Russians' expropriated assets. And very good example is a land lease given by the United States, macro financial assistance by the European Union. It's assistance of our partners at the credits and also grants from the international financial organizations. Till the end of the year, we have already agreements for $29 billion. That's already signed agreements. We are continuing our work because we know that the budgetary deficit because of the war is around $5 billion every and each month. Of course, we receive partially this amount from our partners. We would like to see the bureaucratic process moving faster so we can conduct appropriate businesses and the burden is alleviated. Of course, we have partial this from our budget, from our duties, loans, etc. In this conference, we have talked with our partners and talked about additional amounts in support of additional projects, demining, for example, and some other activities to support our activities. Of course, talking about the railroads, we talk with our partners to have more opportunities to do that through the to the railroads, but also not only railroads, on the waterways can play important role, and the roads, the ports of the Black Sea shall play an important role. We have talked about it during our meetings, and we are convinced that the Ukrainian ports can be used because practically just to replace them 100% by waterways, roads or railroads is impossible. We need to develop our road infrastructure. Our partner is the European Union, and all our trade is concentrating into Western directions. But we should not forget about the sea. We are in the process of negotiation. Our Minister of the Infrastructure was here present. He had a series of events and talked about several details.
Gentleman with the blue shirt, please.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. I'm Jamie Keaton with Associated Press. I would like to follow up on some of the questions from my colleagues about the $750 billion recovery plan, and particularly the numbers that you've been citing now, about $300 billion to $500 billion that are frozen. How realistic is it that Ukraine can possibly obtain that money? Because that's a lot of money that you're talking about, and there's a long process by which that may be eventually. So how realistic is it, and how long is Ukraine willing to wait to be able to get to some of that money?
Thank you for your question. We actually wouldn't like to wait so long, because we would like to begin processes right now, and we do it right now because we begin this operative recovery, and we do it, we realize it through the Ukrainian budget, with support of our partners, immediate support right now. But as you have heard, we have two next stages, is fast recovery immediately after finishing of the war. It will take, I think, 1 year, because we can't begin recover infrastructure, schools, hospitals in regions where now rockets and bombs are shelling, and then you will recover and they will destroy it again. It will be unfinished process. So we should wait finish of war actions and then begin this fast recovery. And third stage, I hope and I believe it will begin not later than in 1 year after finish of the war, so after fast recovery. It will be global recovery, it will be Ukrainian integration into the EU, it will be recovery of our economy according to the principle Build Back Better. We will use this regional principle and absolutely use principle of European Union and civilized countries. About the money, we understand that and we count all of these damages, and it costs it costs more than 700 billion. So we understand that it's huge money, but we understand that some of them will be compensated from confiscated Russian assets. It should be confiscated given to Ukraine from confiscated Russian assets. But some of them we will take from our budget. Some of them will give us our partners, financial partners, and other money will be invested by business, because recovery is always about business. It will be big projects with private-public partnership. It will be concessions, it will be mutual agreements, so we can develop this and it will develop our economy. It's also, we understand this and we get this in our recovery plan, big recovery plan. So it sounds like a huge money, but if you take different projects and different interests from business, from states to this project, so it's not so much. It will work like work economy in normal countries in normal time. So.
May I add some few words about that, because I really understand that we want to be ready overnight to start tomorrow. But we clearly declare it is the first step of a long journey. The recovery plan, the establishment of recovery plan will not be possible to be made overnight. It will need some time. It will need some time to speak with the big international development and reconstruction banks. The World Bank is a development and reconstruction bank. The EIB, the ERB, these are multilateral banks made out of states who give their money in order to reconstruct, and then you can, of course, achieve a big amount of money in a short time. But, of course, we have to be sure that the principles are respected. This was the reason why we set out such important emphasis on the principle. Transparency, of course, fighting against corruption, preventing corruption, as Prime Minister Michal said before. So, and it is a work in progress. We have to start this night, of course, I totally agree, these different stages of a short-term recovery, a middle-term recovery, a long-term recovery. And as soon as the private sector is engaged because the political stability is given, then you can imagine billions of dollars coming to Ukraine. This is one of the reasons why this afternoon in this room there will be an economic forum from the private sector of Western countries together with private sector delegates from Ukraine in order to create a network of connections.
Before we come to an end, we get two more questions. The gentleman with the black T-shirt, please.
Thank you, STB TV channel. I was concerned that everybody was saying that what will happen after the war, because it's nicer. We can talk about energy efficiency, zero emissions, zero emission economy, but I'm pleased to hear that it's important to speak from the European leaders and important to what is happening now. What's happening with Suma, Akhtirka, Kremenchuk, Akhtirka, they bombed the heating centers. They're talking about the individual ways to heat. Do you have the understanding what should be done with heating for the next season? If we put the model boilers, they need to be ordered already. And one more question on housing. I know that banks and World Bank, they support the idea to make non-residential buildings into residential, to reconvert them. And it's a good idea. I know that there are many industrial zones in Ukraine which can be reformatted or shopping centers, any other sustainable decisions, because these carriages, the railway carriages, they are not sustainable decisions. Thank you. Thank you for your question. We started working on preparation for the heating season months ago, realizing all the challenges of this new heating season. Hundreds of boiler stations are destroyed, and we are aware that these are the risks. And for towns and cities, we started reconstructing them, and we'll do that. We also created some stockpile of modular boilers, which could be deployed within a week on using different fuels, and we also stockpiled different kind of energy and also purifiers for potable water, which just been demonstrated by the war, which is a huge issue. So we're prepared, getting ready for the heating season, but it's understandably where the big plants, electricity plants, where they destroyed to ground zero, it will be difficult to restore heating and electricity supply. And also we have drafted all the procedures. We agreed them with the local authorities, agreed by the government. These documents are partially public accessible, partially they are not accessible because we don't want the enemy to understand our strategy. That's another challenge. All these things you are concerned about, we're working on them, but we have to be honest, but saying that not always will be able to restore central heating already this year, because the losses are huge, and indeed the central heating assets are destroyed, many of them to ground zero. We need to start working from ground zero in many locations. We're working on that. It is absolutely in the center of our attention for both ministers for development of communities and territories, and also the Ministry of Energy. We have established a headquarter center under the Minister of Communities and Territories. In terms of the residential housing, there are also some governmental documents. We prepared some quick decisions. There's modular houses, not carriages, but modular houses. It's a widely spread experience, and we're setting them up together with our partners, first of all with Poland, United States, and other countries providing us with the construction mechanisms. And more than 15,000 of families will get this kind of temporary modular houses where the local authorities send us the request. They know it's better where the buildings are destroyed. And we also completed some drafting of governmental programs, including the mortgage program and leasing program at zero interest rate and simple conditions. But what's important to build this housing, we're also in discussion with our builders and developers on that. I think it's starting from last week, the government structure started buying out this housing for families with a large number of children. 60 apartments already been bought out, and those vulnerable families, those who are in greater need, they will get this support as quick as possible from local authorities. It's important not to forget about the reform of decentralization, which is one of the fastest and most successful one. And we need to say that renovating the housing is also the task for local communities, because they've got their own budgets and they are aware of, they know their communities better, they know the priorities. We are aware that it will take some time, but we're dealing with that and we'll continue dealing with that. Thank you for your question.
Please consider also the fact that there is no sharp distinction between, in the short term, between humanitarian assistance and short-term recovery. Both things are overlapping themselves. Repairing a water pipeline or restoring central heating, this could either be humanitarian assistance or recovery. Though it's really very difficult in the very first beginning to put a label on what we are doing. But it is important to do it because people need to go to school, they need to have a housing, need to eat, and need to sleep. So everything is overlapping in the very first beginning. And I just want to say you these things because we should have also some patience in order to really distinguish what it is needed to be done at the very first moment, under which label, who is paying for. We are investing hundreds of millions, dollars or euros or whatever you want, for the humanitarian assistance. And with that money, we are also able to repair, to restore, and this is also part of recovery, but not the recovery we were speaking here in Lugano. We weren't speaking about humanitarian assistance, but it is the much needed needs at this moment. So just in order to explain you how the terminology is confused, how we have to speak together in order to understand each other. What are you speaking of? Are we speaking the same language? Are you calling same thing the same name? This is the reason why there are so many conferences. We have to speak together and to understand each other.
One last question. Lady with the black sweater, please.
Thank you. Fabienne Kinzelmann, Blick. Mr. President Kassis, from your political and legal perspective, how likely is it that Ukraine will actually be able to use the assets being frozen in Switzerland? And Mr. Prime Minister, if you have to rate Switzerland's efforts to freeze the assets from a scale to 1 to 10, which grade would you give Switzerland?
Well, first of all, let me know that this discussion is not a show. It's not a beauty contest or a quiz. I mean, it's something very serious and very important. So I want to be seriously enough to answer this question. The right of ownership, the right of property is a fundamental right, is a human right. You can violate human right. We had to violate the right of freedom during the pandemic crisis because it was necessary to do that, but we had a legal basis according to the rule of law. You have to ensure the citizen that he is protected against the powership of the state. This is what we call liberal democracies. Of course, we can violate fundamental law, but we have to create the legal base. Now, according to the rules of law we have now in the vast majority of democracy in Europe, we can freeze assets. We can freeze in order to clarify Where are these assets from? Is there any casual binding with the crisis, with the war, with the crime has been committed? Can we demonstrate, is there any evidence of this casuality among these two things? Secondly, we have to use the principle of proportionality. How can we adopt this principle of proportionality in assessing those two things? From an international, from a point of view of international law, these are open questions that have been now addressed everywhere because of the war. Every state is now dealing with the question, but it's not a contest, it's not a beauty contest, it's just we have to accord the most important attention on the fundamental right of individuals, because now we can take a decision which is perfect for the situation in Ukraine, but we create the possibility to take the same decision in many other possibilities, and thus you give much more power to the states away from the citizen. And you know there have been many wars during the centuries in order for the population to have freedom and human rights. So it is important to address the question, but please do it seriously.
Thank you. Dear Mr. President, absolutely, I support Mr. President, and I should note that it's very complicated issue and question, and many countries now are working under changes of their national legislation, and it's sovereign right of each country, of each nation, and it's specific of national legislation. But we also propose to create national legislations and propose to create international legislation and international rules. We just begin this discussion. I just raised this question during this conference, and we propose to find formula to create national and international legislation for possibility of confiscation of frozen assets in case of unprovoked aggression. Which will be rules, in this case, we should discuss and we should find this formula all together. But we, as a country which is under this unprovoked aggression, will very loudly speak about this possibility, because we understand that aggressor who kill our people, who destroy our infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, should pay for this. So, and this is a way how can we all together with our partners to bring him to the responsibility for these casualties, for these damages which they create for nothing, just because they are aggressor, just because they create genocide against Ukrainians. So this is very important, as for me.
Thank you very much. And with this answer, the press conference comes to a close. Thank you very much for being here, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.